Welcome everybody to the Anything Everything podcast, hosted by Tarek and myself, Sami. Today is a special episode because we are proud to welcome Seline Shenoy on the podcast to discuss mental health. So Seline is a fellow podcaster. She has been in the podcast industry for over 5 years now, if I'm getting that correctly.
Yes, you are.
Earlier this year, you celebrated 5 years. Your podcast is called The Dream Catcher. You're also a writer and journalist, and so you've done episodes heavily on spirituality and personal development, among other themes and topics. And so welcome, Seline.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with both of you and excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And it's super relevant because October 10 is Mental Health Day. And a lot of what you talk about is around personal development, personal well-being, psychology. So we can explore the topic of mental health in depth and discuss like issues around mental health, societal and cultural aspects of mental health and how that affects people. Talk a little bit about the taboo as well around mental health in certain cultures and societies, which may even cause mental health problems to get exacerbated instead of help insulate people against mental health issues. So, and now is a more fitting time than ever because based on the World Health Organization's 2019 study, they noted that there's been a very large increase in the incidence of people that have mental health issues in the world. So as a percentage of the population, there's been an increase. And then after the pandemic, there's another research that showed that there's a very sharp increase in mental health issues, especially among young adults and adolescents. So we can talk about why, the possibilities of why that could be happening, as well as diving into a bit more like what happens in order to cause mental health issues with people and how people can work to overcome them or at least manage their symptoms. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting dive.
It is. And I actually read a 2022 study that said that 1 in 4 people have mental health issues or are dealing with them. And there's like a 90% treatment gap in certain countries. So it's not just that there are a lot of people having mental health issues. They're not able to access healthcare or the help that they need to feel better, and the people who are facing economic and social challenges, they're the ones who are most vulnerable to this. So it's
a touchy subject as well for a lot of people.
It is. Yeah.
And in this part of the world, and like in Dubai, in the Arab world, talking about mental health is still not very open. Like in the Western world, if you go to like the US or the UK, mental health is an open subject of conversation. It's easy to talk about. It's still stigmatized a little bit, but over here, it's much more of a heavy topic that people tend to avoid.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think, there's definitely a separation between, developed countries and non-developed, or, the rest of the world. We like to say the Western world and non-Western. So there's that angle as well. The other angle, I think, is around, the secular society, is that in some cultures, like, for example, in China, they used to think that, well, mental health is an imbalance of your qi or yin and yang, right? So that aspect of the taboo and the culture plays on it.
Right.
And I think for us, maybe in this century now and where we are, in this year, why is mental health so important, right? Why is it people want to raise awareness about it?
Yes.
As you said, that it's not being given the right importance.
Right.
And okay, how do we do that? And why is it necessary? And what's affecting it?
Yeah.
So I think we'll juggle between these.
And I think what's most alarming is that we're living in one of the best times in human history.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're getting all our needs met, our basic needs met. We're having basic security, and there's just so many things that we can be grateful for, and still people are just not happy.
Yeah.
They're just not satisfied with their lives. So the question is, what is causing that?
I think you mentioned a very important term. It's grateful.
Yes.
There's a lot to be grateful for. I think one of the main problems, and we can dive into this a bit more later, is that people aren't expressing gratitude with what they have.
Yes. And they're not recognizing, they're more focused on what they lack versus what they have. Yeah. And that's a completely different mindset.
100%. So I'm going to rewind just a little bit. So how would we Like, what is the definition of like mental health and mental health issues? How would you define mental health issues?
So it is such a vast, it can run the gamut, really. It can be the ones that are clinically diagnosable, like bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, and things like that. Then you can have, your garden variety anxiety, or just someone who's not able to cope with their emotions. Certain kinds of mindsets that are not serving them.
That affects your well-being.
Not being aware of certain blind spots that you have.
So what does that look like? If you're someone who has anxiety, what does that look like?
Anxiety can have a lot of physical symptoms. Generally, they say you have an increased heartbeat, or you tend to feel just stressed out more than the average person. So not just being able to cope with the regular day-to-day events that are happening in your life. So I think that is one of the main signs that you are having an anxiety problem. And if you're reliant on medications, for instance, a lot of anti-anxiety medications are being popped in like more and more people are getting addicted to it. And I think that is like really a problem now.
I think the most famous would be Xanax. Valium probably is also famous. The anxiolytics. The reason I'm asking is because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have mental health issues, but either suppress them or try to repress what they're feeling, which exacerbates the problem.
And human beings are so resilient. We can take a lot. We can take a lot of pressure, and we just kind of trudge through it, and we feel like we can make it. We can somehow cope with what's going on. I mean, I've heard some people deal with such difficult circumstances in their life, but the human spirit is very strong. It's very resilient. But so sometimes you need to have somebody tell you, or an outside perspective to tell you, hey, what you're going through is not normal.
And that's definitely the case. If we go into the gender tangent a little bit, that's when men sort of bottle things much more.
They do,
And that's why I think the stat is men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide,
and they have shorter lifespans compared to women.
Now, women apparently attempt suicide more, but men actually, go through with it. So
do you think it's because they're not able to express
it's definitely
their
that's feelings. The case, right? This is where the taboo side of it comes in.
And plus women are more emotionally oriented. They're socialized to be able to
the social support
speak
system.
about their feelings and to process them. It's not considered something that would make them less of a woman. But for men, 100%. That's the case. Be a man.
100%.
Suck it up.
That statement alone is,
and 100%. And I really feel bad for men, because that is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
There's a meme I saw when I was browsing Reddit yesterday, which was someone who is sitting down and looks really upset, and then the person comes in and says, "Man up," to that person, a man who's upset. And after he said "man up," the guy just becomes really, really happy and was like, "Yeah, all I needed was someone to tell me to man up, and now all my problems are solved." So it's how it is.
I didn't know it was that easy.
There's in Arabic, like in Lebanese, there's many phrases that basically say, "You're a man up, just swallow your emotions and keep going."
So let's double click a little bit on that, on the taboo side. Why do you guys think, why is it so prevalent? Not just in the Arab world, but even in East Asian countries, is that taboo is so strong. Is it cultural? Is it religious? What's creating that inability to express yourself and put things out there?
I think it comes from the traditional gender roles that we have been conditioned to believe in. The men are the provider. They're the ones who are supposed to hold the fort. Women are the caretakers. They're the ones who can afford to, deal with their feelings. And so I think men are supposed to put a brave front. And I also think historical, usually if you look back in history, men are the ones who went to war. They were the warriors. So it comes back from from all of that. So I think on a cellular level, men were taught to be stoic, to be, more rational in their thinking, because if you didn't do that, like, your family would fall apart. So I think historical, evolutionary perspective, I think it
still plays on us for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And more cultures are, I think that also plays a big part.
But there's a stigma on even if you have a problem, you don't sort of talk about it. You don't, and I think there's a bit of like a, maybe hate or distrust of the medical community in general. Like, do you think this is a correct, assessment that in general men don't like going to the doctor, even forget mental, even bodily, issues, an injury? Oh no, I'll be fine.
I think that is deeply rooted in fear.
It's fear. Okay.
Yeah. It's not, I don't think it's an inherent distrust in the medical system, but it's more of, if I go and I find out something is wrong with me, then I don't want to even know. So they kind of fear.
Ignorance is bliss kind of
thing?
Yeah,
exactly. So they fear that there is actually a problem. Because
but they know they do with the physical one,
even for physical, because that's not been my experience, but maybe
maybe it's more of an Arab thing. That the Arab guy would rather die than, oh no, I'm fine, I don't need to go to the doctor, even if you have a high fever.
Older generations, perhaps.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to tie it into the mental, because the mental, there's more of a stigma around it.
Oh, for sure.
And people jump to that, like, hypothesis or induction that if they have an issue, they're crazy.
Yeah.
The tagline, right?
Yeah,
is always
they're crazy, or
immediately they're crazy.
Mentally retarded. That was a word that was used until recently, actually, but now it's considered so
not politically correct.
Very offensive. You don't call someone mentally
even though
retarded
it was a medical term, but it became a tool to bully people.
It's offensive. It's an offensive word.
But anyway, they used to, people with like anxiety and depression used to go to mental institutions, to asylums. They used to lock them up.
Yeah.
Because they were, and
they were treated inhumanely. They were
terribly.
Yeah. But they were told, their families were told, like, we'll take care of them, but they really didn't.
Yeah.
The whole intention was to sequester them away from society so that they don't infect people with their craziness.
Yeah. And I think another part of the past that seeps into the today's stigma and taboo of how we see mental health is that a lot of mental health problems were associated with demonic possession.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you have mental health issues, like you're depressed or you're really anxious, you're possessed.
Yeah.
And
or you're cursed by some god that you angered.
Exactly.
Or the devil is
So it's not as prevalent nowadays to think that.
And you know what they used to do? So they used to drill a hole in somebody's skull.
Is it lobotomy? Is that?
I don't know what the treatment was called, but they used to drill the skull, and so that the evil spirit could get out of the body.
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so basic.
Yeah, that's not a lobotomy.
That was in the Neolithic times, but then in medieval times, and then you look at the shaman culture. They did all these incantations. They were doing all these tribalistic rituals to, prayer essentially, to drive the evil spirits away.
Yeah, cleanse your spirit.
Cleanse your spirit. So it was only until like the 1700s and the 1800s that people started looking at mentally challenged, mentally ill people as people who need help. Not people you have to shun away, or as social pariahs that you just toss away. So
and the birth of psychoanalysis and so on, where it became much more formalized.
Formalized. That happened like just last century. We had people like Freud, Carl Jung, and Abraham Maslow. They're the ones who started giving the right languaging for all these
which is a very recent development.
In the mid-1900s, I would say.
When you look at human history and how we've historically dealt with things like this.
But it's interesting. The ancient Egyptians were the most advanced with this.
Okay.
So the medicine men, they used to recommend patients to, well, they didn't call them patients, but people who came to them, to engage in some creative act or to go out and play, which is very similar to what is recommended for patients nowadays.
There was a lot of wisdom in ancient Egypt.
Yeah, and they found two papyri ancient papyri that were written in 6th century where they actually identified the human mind as a source of cognitive function. So they recognized that it was actually where mental functioning occurred, not some, like it didn't happen in an outside entity, or we weren't influenced by other forces.
Yeah.
So they were ahead of their times. So there were certain civilizations that were aware.
I think so. There were ancient cultures that treated mental health as something that needed intervention in a good way, like to help the person.
Yeah.
I know that there were African cultures that did the same thing. I know that the ancient Greeks also had a similar approach. But then things deteriorated somehow, and it became so taboo and stigmatized.
Yeah, I think as superstition and religion started taking over, and kind of completely running people's lives. Not that there's anything wrong with religion, but I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah.
But it made people completely center all their whole life on the precepts of religion and what their priest would say or what their holy person would say, and completely ignore the fact that there could be other ways of looking at what they're dealing with.
It's part of the time where I think there were witch hunts all the time.
Witch hunts,
burning witches at the stake and so on. So that was for centuries.
Yeah. So
which, I mean, it brings us to today.
Yeah.
There's more and more people that are suffering from mental illnesses, namely anxiety and depression.
Higher suicide rates too.
Higher suicide rates, which is a result usually of anxiety, depression, bipolar as well, disorder.
Yeah, loneliness. Yeah, feelings of loneliness.
Yes, loneliness. Well, loneliness is because we've become a more me-centric, individualistic culture. In the past, we were more connected to family, friends. Now we're kind of in our room, on our laptop, or on our smartphone. We consider our followers our friends when really they're not. You need to friends are the people you meet for coffee or you play with. I was fortunately part of the last generation who had a normal childhood.
Okay.
I actually
define normal, please.
So I went out to play with my friends.
Okay.
We we got to hang out in the malls. We didn't sit in our we just did things that allowed us to connect with each other and build a community. I have really fond memories of that. I mean, I didn't get a smartphone until I was, 16?
Okay, wow.
Yeah, born in the early 80s. So yeah, it's, and I'm really happy that happened to me.
I hear that a lot from people who are, your age or a little bit older.
Yeah.
Even our age, it's that we
I
grew
think you guys
up,
on the border.
we're on the cusp.
Or on the cusp. Yeah.
But we grew up without all these insane distractions that kids nowadays have.
And we did have video games, I'll say, but even so, like I had people.
There was a social aspect.
There was a social aspect to it, exactly.
Video gaming.
Yeah.
Right now, video gaming is more isolated and single player.
Even the cartoons we watched, they all had a good message embedded in them. Like I was a big fan of Disney and the golden age of Disney. We had like The Little Mermaid, we had Mulan, and all of them featured these very strong, independent women. And I think that kind of influenced me. It gave me good values because as a child I could take that all in. And so I think living in that era really helped develop my foundation.
So I think what we're saying here is the fact that now a lot of kids and adolescents have too much access to like social media and things like that. This is one of the main drivers of the increase in mental health problems.
One of the big ones for sure.
There's a meme I just wanted to tell you about that. There's like it's split in two pictures. One picture is, in the 80s or 90s, parents telling your child, come back from outside. You're playing outside too much. Now they're playing on the game and they're saying, you need to go outside.
Yeah.
So the tables have turned.
That's funny.
Come in from outside and now it's go outside.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah. But there's something to be said about our fundamental need for in-person socialization.
Yeah.
And that's how we've evolved. And in tribal
we need it in
settings.
different doses. Like it depends on your personality type. Of course, if you're more introverted, then you don't need as much as an extrovert would. I heard that extroverts went absolutely insane during COVID.
Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
even
They were like an
introverts-
animal in a
Yeah.
cage.
It's
Like
such a
just-
drop, right? It's such a
yeah,
drop.
I've
for
heard
them.
from some of them, and I am more introverted, and I was like, it was fine for me. Like
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff done, you know.
Right. But even introverts do need social.
Oh, no, no,
Oh yeah, they do,
definitely
but
need
not
social
as
interaction.
much. Like
No,
we are
not as
able to
much.
cope with being on our own much better than an extroverted
Yeah.
person
No,
would.
no, 100%. The other thing is that, for
Yeah.
example, like in companies, ideas, when they started to see that people, were at home, in the pandemic,
Yeah.
they realized that ideas that don't come when you're in a meeting, they come when you're like having a coffee break, or when you're getting water together, or you're bumping into someone between the hallway or something. So that we lost a big chunk of that during the pandemic. And that contributes to that social cohesion,
Yes.
right? That togetherness, the chemistry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very true.
So how do you think? What are the mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
of why social media and the advent of social media contributes to an increase in mental health issues?
Okay, so first of all, it really exacerbates the social comparison aspect. People post pictures of themselves living their best life. We don't really know what's going on and what's really going on because they will put their best face forward.
Yeah.
So we see that. We see them having a good time, going on all these nice vacations or, going out for parties. And it can seem like such a glamorous, wonderful life. And we feel like, oh, what am I doing? And I know young people face this more than older people, but it's the sense that, oh, okay, like I think you mentioned before we started recording, FOMO, like I'm really missing out on life and my life sucks. So with that, I think that gets really worsened when we are browsing through our feed on social media, when we see all these images. And I also think, an addiction to getting more followers and likes. I think kind of tying our self-worth to the number of likes and followers we have is really, really, I think it's really risky.
Yeah.
Because if you tie your self-worth to anything external, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think being so dependent on other people's validation in the online world is going to get you into trouble. You're not going to feel good about yourself. So that's one thing. And I like I mentioned, it isolates you. Social media isolates you and
Yeah, it
keeps you
certainly
away
does.
from other.
The thing is, maybe from a psychological point of view, what they've, and I still think they're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
On the the damages on us. They've created a dopamine feedback loop.
Yeah, the dopamine feedback.
Right,
Yeah,
that
Every
is-
time you get a like, you get a
Exactly.
you get a
right?
hit
And
of
it's
dopamine.
substituted for the
it's like an addiction.
in-person.
It is
It
an
really
addiction.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So yeah,
and
getting
we're all victim to it. We're all falling victim. We're part of it, and
Yes.
this is why they're pushing for people to sort of detox, right?
yeah, you got to take those social media detox every once in a while for sure. And especially if you're a parent, I think encouraging your kids to
hard
stay
to
away from their
balance.
devices
Yeah.
for a while. It's super important.
Yeah.
So
The validation piece is,
Yeah.
I think, crucial. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
seeking external validation.
Yeah.
Social media made that so much easier. And a lot of us, just by default, have that insecurity where we want to be seen as people who other people look up to.
yeah.
And with the prevalence of Instagram, Twitter, and all of that,
Yeah.
depending on whether you want the aesthetic or the mind or
Yeah.
how you want to get perceived,
Yes.
you want to be perceived as someone who makes a difference. And when someone likes your photo or when someone likes your tweet, it gives you a bit of a hit of dopamine. Like,
does.
okay, yeah, they're validating me. And seeking that from external sources, it's a loop that you can never satisfy.
You can never
no matter
satisfy,
how
yeah.
many likes you get. You start also comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah.
Like, why is this person getting this many likes whereas I'm not? Even
Yeah.
though they're your like peer. And
Yeah.
so it's never ending.
Yeah, as an influencer or someone who needs the traffic for your business, it can be even harder because you're actually looking at the metrics as a way of how effective you are,
Yeah.
how
Where's the
effective your
line?
content is. And I found myself going down the rabbit hole a couple of years ago, and I had to actually become cognizant of, okay, this is happening. I need to take a step back and be okay if like a certain post or certain blog post doesn't do well. That's okay, and actually look at it from a rational point of view. Like what could I have changed, or what was something that a different angle I could have explored that topic that I was tackling. So it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was not somebody who was on the online space, I would probably not be on social media as much as I
Really?
am.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have.
You don't, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
have some-
don't?
So I have like the standard accounts, but I never ever look at them.
Oh.
The only thing that I do is sometimes I look at how our podcast is performing on Instagram and on
Oh,
YouTube.
thank you.
But even then, what?
I was saying thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for caring.
I
Yeah.
definitely care about that. But
yeah,
even
as
then,
you should. Yeah.
Yeah,
From
but
one
even then,
podcaster to another.
I don't read too much into like comments or things like that because there are some comments that could be mean or it could be like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm sure
You
you're
get that. Oh yeah.
aware
I've got
of,
him. I've got him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you attach yourself to those comments, the negative ones get to you way more than the
Yeah,
positive ones.
there's
Like you
so
can get
many-
100 positive ones,
so
then
many
one
on-
negative one that's just going to stick in your head.
Haters. There's so many haters, and
Yeah.
they're Twitter thugs, as we call them, that they're
100%.
called.
The thing
They're
is
out there to get you.
do you think so? I just think that it's
Well,
just
yeah.
it's a symptom of everyone having a voice, which is a good thing and a bad thing. That's the problem
That's
with
a
it,
double-edged sword.
right?
But I
Yeah.
think the people who are hating have deep-seated issues
Oh yeah, they
themselves.
do. They
You
do.
wouldn't go around hating on someone who's trying to make a positive impact on the world
Yeah.
unless you're someone with deep-seated issues.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's also because of this whole, I like to call them social viruses.
Okay.
Modern social viruses, having a sense of entitlement, narcissism,
Yeah.
thinking you're the center of the universe. I think a lot of people are developing those, I don't know what we call them, viewpoints, the grandiosity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
The belief that I need to put something out there, I need to.
or I'm more special
Yeah.
than other people are. And parenting, and a lot of parents, unfortunately, they coddle their kids. And I know I'm going to get, people might not like this, but I think kids are coddled a bit too much, and they made feel like, oh, you're special. And,
For sure.
It contributes.
And because of that, they don't develop a sense of humility. They don't think, they're not service oriented. Instead of thinking about, okay, how can I help others? They think about, how can I glorify myself? How can I stand out? How can I?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should not acknowledge your strengths and put yourself out there and promote, but also have your feet on the ground and remind yourself that you really are like everyone else. You really are. And that way, I'm kind of nostalgic about the times when people had that sense of, realism and that character, which really made them see the world through a lens of like community versus me. It's all about me, my opinion. I am my identity, or like what makes me different. Like, look at me. Okay, we are looking at you. So what are we supposed to be seeing here?
Yeah.
It's like,
Do you think that's part of kind of also the rise in celebrities, right? Is
I
that
think
everybody wants to compare to that? That's
I
the
think
ultimate
so.
goal.
Influencers
I
and
heard
celebrities.
T.D.
Yeah.
Jakes. He's Bishop T.D. Jakes. He's a really famous Christian figure. He said that people are too busy trying to be famous, but they're not spending enough time trying to be effective.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would say, just let your work speak for itself. Don't try to
but
like
it's hard, right?
don't
People
try to
want the
like
easy route.
push yourself on others. Like, okay,
Yeah.
we get that you're pretty, we get that you're smart, we get that you're, we got all these amazing social connections, but then so what?
But that.
What are you doing? What kind of? And I think not having that ability to see yourself as someone who can be a benefactor in society is really one of the core issues in why we find it difficult to get out of our own head and completely get lost in our own world.
Yeah, which is what precipitates things like depression and anxiety.
Exactly. It's and I'm not saying that you should not get treatment. You do, for sure, but stop being so engrossed in yourself.
Yeah, you're not the center of the universe.
You're not the center of the universe. There's a world out there. There are people who are facing much bigger challenges than you. Like seriously.
Yeah, no matter who you are, there's always someone who's
There's always
facing
someone who
something worse.
wish that they had your life.
Yeah.
Your life would be a
100%.
luxury to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So-
ties back to what you mentioned in the beginning, gratitude.
Gratitude. And
Because
I think
of how
that's
self-centered people are.
and celebrity culture also has a big influencer culture as well. Like influencers are the new celebrities, you know?
That's what Instagram is now. I'm just trying to think about how things sort of transitioned as well. Is that when you look at people's online presence,
Yeah.
the factors of your popularity have just got much more slimmer.
Yeah.
So then the people that without social media, there were other factors that you can play on and manipulate
Yeah.
to improve your standing in society, because
Yeah.
we care about legacy and our social status.
Absolutely.
When it became online, it became so sort of superficial.
It did. Yeah.
So therefore, everybody had to sort of conform to a number of factors that it's a win all for some, and others just are struggling.
they have no chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the everyone.
You have to be a good marketer also.
There you go.
Personal
Yeah.
branding, marketing, those skills are essential in really, making yourself visible in the online world. You might be the smartest person, someone who had really interesting things to say, but if you don't know how to market yourself and
No
gain
one's
that
gonna hear
visibility,
it.
no one's going to know who you
that's the
are,
message.
So, yeah.
But that creates a loop, because once you get in that loop where you're like, I need to promote myself, I need to do this, I need to do that, it takes you out of the present moment.
It does. Yes.
And it's almost a cliche
Mm-hmm.
where they tell you, if you want to be content, just live in the present moment. But because of the chase, everyone is chasing something nowadays.
Yeah.
It's-
And they're trying to find this ready-made formula for happiness, but there isn't. You need to go within and ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need? And that comes from having enough time to really reflect, understand yourself, finding the right tools to kind of get to know yourself on a really deep level. It comes from facing challenges, like really challenging yourself, getting outside your comfort zone, seeing what you're made of. People don't really think about this. The Greeks have two words for happiness. So eudaimonic happiness, I don't know if you heard of it, and hedonic happiness.
Yeah, we have an episode
And
on
we're
happiness.
addicted to hedonic happiness. We want
100%.
instant gratification. We want we want to have that piece of chocolate cake. We want to go for that quick rich scheme, as opposed to the eudaimonic happiness, which asks us to work for it.
Yep.
Because there is so much joy in working hard and really pursuing something that has meaning and purpose to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So there's if we think of historically, humanity, it was a struggle on a day-to-day basis to survive and things like that. And I think we also mentioned that in today's society, we have it better than ever. There are very few people. There are still people who are struggling.
Absolutely,
for the lowest part of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so shelter, food, water.
Yeah.
But more and more people are in a place where they're not really struggling anymore. They have what they need
the
to
basic
survive.
needs met, yes.
So the lack of that struggle, how much do you think that actually plays in to the advent of mental health issues becoming more and more prevalent? Because the way I see it is that if you're struggling to kind of survive, to kind of make ends meet, to just really make it, of course it's detrimental and stressful and stuff, but it's
your focus is on that. Your complete focus is on that.
We
So
are
now
made
we
to
have
struggle.
all this
Free space.
is
Mentally.
bandwidth to look at other things, and and if it's not directed towards worthy pursuits, like if you don't have any creative hobbies, if you don't have a job that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning, as I said before, if you're not thinking about, okay, how can are there any activities I can engage in that can help my community or the world?
Yeah.
So if you're not using that extra bandwidth wisely, it can go haywire, or it can get engaged in things that are not going to serve you.
Yeah, because
know,
that struggle kept you in the moment.
Exactly. So it's like knowing how to use your mental resources wisely. What kind of media are you taking in? Are you watching reality TV all day?
Yeah.
Are you, just scrolling your feed all day? Like, what are you actually taking in? Just like being conscious of what you eat and how it's impacting your physical body. What's your mental diet?
Yeah, what are you giving attention to?
What are you reading? What are you listening to?
Yeah.
Because that is shaping who you are.
It does. Yeah.
You know, and the internet is such as that there are echo chambers there. If you follow a certain trail of thinking, you're going to,
100%.
you know, get all sorts of evidence that supports your viewpoints. What if yours is
Confirmation bias.
controversial? Like if you're a neo-Nazi, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to find tons of YouTube channels that
Echo chambers.
That echo chambers. Yeah, so you have to be so careful about which camp are you in, and what are you doing with your mind, really.
And on that, I think especially important is that you were saying this, we need to understand ourselves more.
Yeah.
We know that we have a negativity bias.
Yes.
We know that our minds
A lot of
naturally-
blind spots.
Yeah, we deviate to, we have confirmation bias, we have a host of other biases and natural, inclinations towards certain areas. So
Yeah.
when you were saying, when your real estate is clear, it's
Yeah.
going to go to the negative.
Absolutely.
Right? It's
yeah.
just,
yeah.
it's
That's
just
how we're
it is.
built.
That's how
you
the
know?
needle turns.
Yeah,
Just-
that, you know.
There's a
Look out for
compass.
that saber-toothed tiger and come pounce
it's
on
a
you any
compass.
minute. It's like, yeah.
Exactly. It's like there's danger, or flight
Danger,
or flight.
danger, yeah.
Anything, I've noticed this like in myself and in others,
Yeah.
is that when you don't understand something, your immediate response is hate or fear.
Yeah.
The moment you don't understand something.
And that's ignorance, right?
R-
That's,
it is.
It comes from
Yeah.
ignorance, not having education.
I think a lot of people also lack self-awareness.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, like
And-
they don't know how to objectify themselves and kind of see themselves in a bigger picture. But instead
Absolutely.
it's just like,
And that surprises me so much. I have some people in my family and my, some acquaintances, and it's just, they're operating in a different paradigm. And I'm not trying to make myself sound like I'm better than them or I'm elitist or whatever, but it's a completely different way of operating.
yeah.
You know, and I think that they're at a different stage in their personal evolution, right? Where
Yeah.
they just cannot really see themselves.
It's a kind way to put it. as
Sorry?
well. It's a kind way to put it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all
Because we're all always
at different
evolving.
stages in
Yeah.
our personal evolution. You know, sometimes there are some 80-year-olds who get stuck in the lower stages, and that's fine. That's their journey, I guess. You know.
Do you think it has an impact on mental health, whether or not you're self-aware? To be, I feel like...
Yeah, that is an absolute necessity.
But if you're self-aware, I feel like aren't you more likely to fall into depression or anxiety if you're more self-aware?
Yeah, if you're too introspective and you go down the rabbit hole and you don't get the right guidance and you don't know where to draw the line.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, and what do you
that
do
can
with it?
happen. In fact, I've been told that I read too much, I think too much.
I'm the same. So I
I've
felt...
been told you're psychoanalyzing every single thing. What's wrong with you? Just live your life. And I'm like, I don't know how to be any different. I
Yeah,
really don't.
It's a
In
tough
my
balance. It's a tough balance.
It's a tough
Because
balance,
the world is
yeah.
in extremes. It's either you're overthinking or you're
No, but from
underthinking.
their perspective, these are the people who live on the surface.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are people who like to party and who nothing.
a lot of them never
they
experience
go out for a
mental health
drink and they just joke around. A lot of people live like that. They don't, examine their life. What was that saying by one of the Greek philosophers? An unexamined life is not worth living.
Socrates. Yeah.
He said that. And if Socrates was onto something, that's all I'm saying.
But I mean, the people who live like that, a lot of them don't have mental health issues. Some of them do, for sure. I don't. So what I'm
do you
trying to...
think you're making a blanket statement there?
I don't know if there's a correlation, right?
Is
Yeah.
it disguised? Is it like a facade?
Yeah.
Like there's no way, because
That's-
there are a lot of these people. I'm sure not.
I
all
do
of
know
them
some of them who are in my family members who just live a hedonistic life.
Yeah.
They party. They like to have good food.
Do you
they
know
like,
if they're suffering
they
from
like-
mental health problems?
They seem very happy, actually.
There
So
we go.
sometimes I ask myself,
There we go.
But you never really know because
So-
let's say they don't do they change
and
their
they're
routine for
social
1 week.
climbers.
Yeah.
They're social climbers, then solely materialistic oriented. And I'm thinking, but they seem happy.
Yeah.
They seem content. Or am I missing something
No,
here?
I've had the same experience.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something I think
Which
worth
is why
exploring.
I brought up the question.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like there may be something under the surface, but I doubt it, because you can usually tell from the way they act that everything is there's very little depth. Everything is on the surface.
There's no
with them.
depth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe there's things that are repressed. that they don't know about, right?
Could be, but
it comes
maybe it
out
never
when you're
comes-
alone. When you're
I mean,
never
look at-
alone, how would you know?
Look at some famous people, some celebrities. A lot of them who live that rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah.
Eventually, they implode,
Yeah,
or
they
they
do.
become
Yeah.
like they start becoming like a spiritual devotee or something. You know.
Yeah, the mind or the body sort of also tends towards that,
You
right?
know, yeah.
With extreme, like maybe trauma in that case.
Exactly. You never know. Maybe they're drinking a lot to kind of numb their feelings. These
could
people
be.
who live that way.
Yeah.
Or they're on a medication, anxiety medication. You never know. So
You really don't.
we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. That's all I'm going to say.
For
Maybe they
example-
just don't express it. They don't want to show that they're
Yeah.
weak, or that
It's part of the taboo as well.
that the lifestyle is not something that is agreeable to them deep down inside. You never know. So
On that point, I was watching the David Beckham documentary on Netflix, which I
Yeah.
think just came out a few days ago. He spoke about his own struggles with mental health because of the World Cup in 1998. So he became like the scapegoat for the entire country, and for a year and a half, he was targeted, him and his family, extensively. So he finally opened up on it, and I think it's part of the taboo, right? As a male, maybe you don't want to open up, but he spoke about his struggles and how much it affected him.
yeah, being in the spotlight is. I can't imagine it being something.
Especially someone like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
mega celebrity.
Yeah. And
I don't think
and
humans
he's
are
quite
meant to be.
Yeah, he was someone he's quite a loved figure. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
now, but
yeah.
back in the day they had
and he's
hangmen.
a good, you know.
Yeah, they wanted to kill him. But
They wanted to
we're not, as humans, I don't think we're meant to be that famous. As
Yeah.
in,
Like, for instance, Taylor Swift, she is trending everywhere, and I sometimes
Yeah.
imagine what could life be looking like through her eyes.
I would hate it, personally.
You would hate it.
I
She
think I would hate
seems
it.
to be having a good time. Like
She
for
does.
some people, fame suits
Well,
them.
It works.
You know, if they know how to handle it. You know, I know Justin Bieber, he was famous since he was a kid, and then he had like a mental breakdown. And he was able to find himself again, so to speak, after joining a church, a specific denomination. I don't remember which one it is, but he started becoming more religious.
and it worked for him.
And it worked for him, and he got back on track. So people have different ways of managing their mental health, and religion has helped a lot of people.
Do you think that it's more common with childhood celebrities?
I think
Is that
so.
an easy
Mental
correlation?
health
I
problems?
think
Yeah, I think so.
because they
Right.
don't have time to develop their individuality.
Yeah.
Because you know, they tend to think that what their social image is who they are. You know, especially if they're worshipped like he was. You
Yeah.
can kind of lose sense of reality and feel
Demi
less
Lovato.
accountable.
Miley
for-
Cyrus.
Kevin McAllister or
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Child
Yeah.
stars usually have
Child stars and the
Mental
pressure,
health
the
issues.
pressure to keep up with the expectations.
I think other part
That's
of
got to
it
be
is-
hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe on a personal like development note as well, is that when you're that famous,
Hmm.
you're not really told no. You're not really told you're doing wrong.
You're the
So you don't get the
grandiosity.
feedback.
That's
Yeah.
where it comes from.
don't get
Grandiosity. That's
feedback.
why a lot of these famous people, the whole Me Too movement, a lot of these famous
Hmm.
men thought they were invincible. The ones who were, you know, the Harvey Weinstein. They thought
Yeah.
they were omnipotent, like they could do whatever they want, and no one's going to point a finger at them
Yeah.
until someone did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you don't even have to be famous to have grandiosity. Like, and I think that's a very dangerous way to live.
Yeah. A lot of
Because
people.
a part of having good mental health is being willing to take a look at yourself from, you know, realistically. Okay, what am I doing right, and where am I going wrong? How
It's
do I,
also important not
you know,
to.
and just be open. Be open. Like, don't berate yourself. Don't push yourself down. But be willing to look at where you've gone wrong, or where you are going wrong. What are your flaws?
True.
'Cause you do
I
have
do
them.
think it's important to kind of limit that introspection as well, because
Again, guided. Like
Yeah.
you might need a coach, you might need a counselor. I know that helped me a lot, you know.
yeah, it's very easy to
So-
fall into existential crisis.
Absolutely. So
If you
again,
become too
balance. In the beginning, you will need that assistance. If you can't afford therapy, get a friend who you trust or a family member who you trust. Just talk to somebody who you feel who can give you that support that you need. But then once you feel like you're done, you're done. Don't stay in therapy for life. Like that's not good, you know.
But then, okay, let's bring up the point around Stoicism, because
Yeah.
it seemed like it had a revival in the pandemic
Yeah.
where people...
I became a big fan of it.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's getting something right.
Yeah.
Because we have that deep-seated sort of desire for, just like understanding our emotions. Not
Yeah.
eliminating them, right? Because we
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
But just understanding them.
Yeah.
And
It's a very
self-therapy.
It's all about moderation, right? That's
Yeah.
what Stoicism teaches, it's appealed to a lot of people because it takes the middle road, and it takes out the woo-woo aspect of personal development,
Yeah.
and you're not, and that toxic positivity where life is beautiful and it's real. It's
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
Look,
it
the
is
world can get
practical.
really hard,
Yeah.
and this is what you can do to manage. Life is tough. Deal with it.
Yeah, life is messed up.
It's
No,
it can be messed up.
Shit is gonna happen.
It's just shit's gonna happen, and Stoicism is essentially gives you the tools and the philosophy and the frameworks to deal with these inevitable challenges. And I think that's much needed right now, because I think we were getting too much in the too much positivity. Because
I mean, it can be summarized in a sense that the balance, right? It's just about, we know that it's about balance, but how do you achieve that balance?
How do you achieve the balance?
Put effort. You have to
Put
put effort for
effort,
that.
yeah.
Get feedback from people.
Yeah.
Introspect to a certain, so, the tools vary, but you have to try. You have to put some effort.
Yeah. For me, creativity was a big, it really, really helped me in my journey of healing. Just being able to find an outlet where I could express myself. Because it gets you into that state of flow. I'm sure you've heard of it, that state of flow. And
I've experienced
being
it.
in that state is just, it's so beautiful. And it's not like, the sugar high that you get, or the temporary spike in happiness that you get after buying a nice handbag. All the ladies know what I'm talking about. It's a nice steady flow of joy and
natural,
and I think having a creative outlet is great. I think it really helps with managing your internal state. So
for people who maybe struggle to identify that they're facing an issue, what are some common symptoms that they can understand about themselves, which points to the fact that they need to make a change, otherwise they're heading for even worse problems and worse mental health issues?
Well, I can't be specific because, generally speaking, you just would not feel, you'd be consistently unhappy. You'll have a sense of ennui, like you're not happy with life. You just have this constant dissatisfaction. I think that is a big sign. And of course, physical symptoms, you're feeling low, you're feeling lethargic, having issues with your sleep. I think those are pretty telltale signs.
I think with men, anger is a big one.
Oh, yeah.
You're just irritable, you're crabby, and you're losing your temper with people. That's also a big one,
I think maybe in terms of the tips, we could consider that it's not about just yourself, it's about what you can do for others.
Right?
It's about active listening.
Absolutely.
They talk about that, and I have a bit of an issue with it, because it seems like we've just thrown away listening alone, and we need to do active listening. Why can't
very
just
important
listening
distinction.
be good?
Very important
We
distinction.
have to add an antecedent, right?
Yeah.
For it. So listening is in itself a thing.
Yeah.
And it's part of empathy.
Yeah.
Which we
and
need
I
to.
also think lifestyle changes can be a big, big help. Like just eating healthier, having a more nutritious diet, getting enough physical. People know this. Getting enough physical exercise, getting enough rest, getting enough sleep. I don't know about you guys, but if I don't sleep well for one night or 2 nights,
100%.
I'm super cranky and the world looks very dark. That's what happens to me. But
and it causes a host of issues
it
later on in life.
or someone who has chronic insomnia. Like just finding a way to deal with that can make a world of a difference.
Oh, for sure.
So because we are essentially a bunch of biochemicals. So if you know how to regulate your physical state, if you know how much, exercise you need and how much water you need to drink, like knowing what your body needs and kind of catering to that can really, really help.
100%. It's
Yeah.
part of, you're learning about your mind and your body. But you
Absolutely.
should kind of, it's easier.
And eating the right foods also. I'm very passionate about that.
Your microbiome, your gut bacteria actually influences your mental health.
Having
very
more greens,
significantly.
having more vegetables that make your blood more alkaline. And obviously staying away from junk food, drinking, like avoid drinking as much as you can. Like, so those kind of things, like it can really help because that'll get you balanced in your body, and which I think is an extremely important aspect in managing your mental health.
100%.
Yeah. Because that mind-body connection, right?
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah. So, how much time do we have? Do we have much time left?
No, I think we're
at time.
Yeah, we're at
We're
it.
at time. Anything else
We've hit
that
the hour mark, and
Yeah.
I mean, we covered a lot. We circled around areas from the cultural to the taboo,
Yeah.
and then the social media aspect,
Yeah.
and a little bit around history, and finally we covered some of the tips around just basic grounding and the
Yeah.
basics and the natural way of life.
Yeah, and I'd say to your listeners, don't be afraid of getting help. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that. And it doesn't make you a weird person, especially the younger people.
Yeah, especially men in this society,
I
in
think
our society.
Yeah. And try to find resources that can help you. There's so many good coaches out there, so many good good influencers, books you can read, podcasts that you can listen to, like this one. So, or mine. So I mean, there are so many resources out there, which is why I'm kind of baffled. It's free resources, so it's like it's out there. Go and get them.
Yeah.
If once you make the decision,
Yeah, people need to learn how to
a whole
help
new
themselves.
a whole new world will open up to you.
Yeah,
'Cause it's out there.
Be self-aware and be aware that you need to help yourself.
That you need to help yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, great.
so-
This has been a great conversation.
yeah.
Thank you
it's
so
been
much
great.
for.
Yeah, we covered a lot of territory.
Thanks, Seline. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
No worries,
Well,
pleasure.
it's a wrap.